We live in an age where being loud is often mistaken for being right. Every opinion must be voiced, every slight must be answered, and every platform rewards speed over thought. In this constant buzz of activity and reaction, one timeless human ability is fading into the background: the art of silence. But silence is not weakness. It's not the absence of courage. It is, in fact, one of the most powerful tools we have for self-mastery. The Stoic philosophers knew this well. In ancient times, they practiced a kind of disciplined restraint, not just in action, but in speech. They understood that the words we don't say often carry more weight than the ones we do. Silence, when chosen deliberately, is a shield against chaos. It protects our integrity. It gives us space to think. And above all, it gives us control over ourselves, over our emotions, and over the situations we find ourselves in. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively on this. So did Epictetus and Seneca. They didn't use silence to withdraw from life, but to engage with it more wisely. They practiced what we might call strategic silence, a silence that listens, reflects, and only speaks when it truly matters. Today, we're going to explore 7 moments in life where choosing silence is not just beneficial, but transformative. These aren't passive silences. They are active decisions, choices that reflect confidence, maturity, and strength. So let's begin. The first situation is one that everyone has faced, and few handle well. 1. When you're unfairly criticized, there's something deeply unsettling about being criticized unjustly. Maybe someone blames you for something you didn't do. Maybe they twist your words, misinterpret your intentions, or attack your character based on a false assumption. The emotional response is immediate: anger, defensiveness, the urge to explain, to prove your worth. But the Stoics urge a different response: silence. Why? Because silence in the face of unfair judgment isn't weakness. It's power under control. Imagine you're working on a team project. You've put in the hours, met your deadlines, and tried your best. But when the meeting comes, your manager singles you out unfairly for the project's flaws. The room is quiet. Everyone watches you. You feel your throat tighten, your mind preparing your defense. But instead of speaking, you pause. You breathe. You choose silence, not forever, but for now. Just in that moment, you're not surrendering. You're stepping into a deeper strength. The strength to delay reaction, to evaluate without ego, and to respond with clarity instead of emotion. The Stoics believed that it's not events themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your own judgment about it. And it is in your power to wipe out that judgment now." When someone criticizes us unfairly, the insult only lands if we accept it as truth. But when we remain silent, internally and externally, we create a space between the event and our response. And in that space, we find our freedom. This doesn't mean you never respond, but you don't respond impulsively. You reflect. Is there truth in the criticism? If so, you grow. If not, you let it pass. Either way, you act from wisdom, not ego. And more often than not, your silence speaks louder than any rebuttal. It signals self-control. It tells the world, I don't need to fight for my value. I live it. Seneca once said, "It is more civilized to make fun of life than to bewail it." In the same spirit, it's more powerful to respond to unfairness with composure than with complaint. Here's something else silence gives you: credibility. People notice how you respond under pressure. They watch how you carry yourself when wrongly accused. A defensive outburst can make you look guilty even when you're not. Calm silence, by contrast, can project integrity and strength. Let's also talk about energy. Every argument, every rebuttal, every effort to prove yourself, it drains your mental reserves. It ties you emotionally to people and opinions that may not even matter in the long run. Silence severs that tie. It keeps you light, focused, free. Now let's be clear. Silence isn't the same as passive acceptance. If a serious injustice requires action, Stoicism doesn't advise inaction. But even then, it teaches us to act deliberately, not reactively. First, be silent, then be wise. In everyday life, you will be misunderstood. You will be judged unfairly. You will be criticized by people who don't know the full story. The Stoic doesn't fear this. He expects it and prepares for it. So the next time someone criticizes you unfairly, don't rush to defend yourself. Don't fire back. Don't explain your worth. Just pause. Let the storm pass. Let your work speak. Let your life speak. And remember the words of Marcus Aurelius: waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. 2. When surrounded by boasting, we've all been there. A group conversation, a networking event, a dinner with friends, and someone decides it's time to broadcast their greatness, their achievements, their possessions, their vacations, their connections. Every sentence is a subtle, or not so subtle, reminder of how well they're doing. Your first instinct might be to compete, to throw in your own accomplishments, to reclaim your place in the hierarchy. But what if you didn't? What if you just listened? Quietly, attentively, without interruption. That's the Stoic path. The discipline of saying nothing and needing nothing in the face of someone else's self-promotion. Boasting is almost always driven by insecurity. People don't brag because they feel whole. They brag because they don't. They want recognition. They want status. They want approval. And when we react with our own stories, we enter the same game. We tie our self-worth to external validation. But the Stoic doesn't play that game. Epictetus once advised, "Be silent as to services you have rendered." Why? Because the truly wise understand that virtue doesn't need applause. Character doesn't need to be broadcast. Accomplishment speaks for itself. Imagine you're at a party and someone starts talking loudly about their recent promotion, their expensive watch, their weekend in the Alps. You nod, you smile, but you stay silent, not because you have nothing to say, but because you know you don't need to say it. This silence is not passive, it's deliberate. It's the kind of silence that says, "I know who I am. I don't need to prove it." That kind of composure makes you stand out, far more than any story ever could. It's also worth noting that people can feel your silence. It makes them reflect. Sometimes your lack of participation in the bragging contest creates a pause, a moment of awkwardness. And that's good. It disrupts the rhythm of empty self-praise. It holds up a quiet mirror where people can see their own insecurity and maybe rethink it. Boasting thrives in echo chambers, but silence breaks the echo. Seneca wrote, "Let us not envy those who seem to be making progress, but are actually moving further away from peace." When you're tempted to prove yourself in response to boasting, remember this: real progress is internal. It's not the promotion, it's the peace. It's not the recognition, It's the resilience. Now here's a powerful truth. When you let others boast and say nothing in return, it doesn't mean you think less of yourself. It means you know your worth isn't up for debate. The modern world constantly nudges us to compete. Social media is a stage for curated lives. Success is marketed. Humility is rare. But the Stoic way cuts through the noise. It invites you to step off the stage, to live quietly and deliberately. And in doing so, you protect your peace. Because here's what often happens when we respond to boasting. The moment passes, but the comparison lingers. We start to measure ourselves, question our path, lose our center. And all for what? A few fleeting moments of external validation. Silence shields you from that trap. It keeps you grounded. It reminds you, I am not what I post, what I earn, or what others see. I am who I am, even in silence. Think about someone in your life who never brags, who doesn't show off, yet commands deep respect. Chances are, their strength lies in restraint, in their ability to let their presence, and not their promotion, define them. That's the Stoic ideal. Live in such a way that you don't need to explain or exaggerate. Let the quiet truth of your actions speak louder than any speech. So the next time you find yourself surrounded by noise, by boasting, by people seeking attention, try this: say less, or say nothing at all. Let them talk, let them impress, and let your silence be a quiet kind of power. The kind that doesn't need the spotlight, because it knows it already shines from within. 3. When you're angry. Anger is one of the most natural human emotions, and one of the most destructive. It can rise without warning, take over our judgment, and leave behind words we wish we could take back. In moments of anger, silence may feel impossible, but that's precisely when it's most needed. The Stoics didn't deny anger. They acknowledged it, but they didn't let it govern them. To them, the space between the feeling and the reaction was where character was built, and silence was the bridge between the two. Imagine you've had a long day. Deadlines are piling up. Then a colleague makes a careless mistake that undoes hours of your work. Frustration boils up. You want to snap, to raise your voice, to tell them how much they've cost you. But then you pause, you breathe, and you say nothing. That moment of silence isn't weakness. It's strength in its purest form. The strength to master your emotions rather than be mastered by them. Marcus Aurelius once asked himself, how much more harmful are the consequences of anger than the causes of it? That question alone can change your life, because anger feels justified in the moment, but it rarely improves anything. More often, it worsens the very situation we were upset about. Think back to a time when you reacted in anger. Maybe you shouted, slammed a door, fired off a message too quickly. Did it solve the problem, or did it make it harder to fix? Now think of a time you paused, said nothing, let the wave of emotion rise and fall. Chances are things went better. That's the wisdom of Stoic silence. Silence gives you time to understand, to ask, why am I really angry? Is it about what happened, or about how I'm interpreting it? Often our anger isn't just about others. It's about expectations. We expect people to be more thoughtful, more careful, more like us, and when they're not, we react. But Stoicism teaches us to expect imperfection from others and ourselves. Epictetus wrote, when someone irritates you, realize that it is your own opinion which is irritating you. Therefore, strive to change your opinion. In other words, the world isn't the cause of our disturbance. Our interpretation is. Silence in anger isn't about bottling things up or pretending everything is fine. It's about creating space, a buffer between stimulus and response, a place where reason can speak louder than emotion. It's also deeply practical. When you respond in anger, you often damage trust, relationships, reputations, and then you have to repair that damage. But when you respond in silence, you preserve peace. You leave the door open for resolution, not escalation. Some of the most respected leaders in history were known not for their words, but for their restraint. Think of Nelson Mandela, imprisoned for 27 years, wronged repeatedly. Yet he emerged not with bitterness, but with grace. He knew that anger might be justified, but forgiveness was more powerful. You don't have to be Mandela to practice this. You just have to remember, you are not your emotion. You are the awareness behind it. Here are some practical ways Stoic silence can help you handle anger. Breathe before you speak. Literally pause. Count to 5. Give yourself a moment. Detach from the story. Don't say they disrespected me. Say they acted carelessly. Focus on the facts. Reflect instead of react. Ask yourself, what outcome do I want? Will anger help me get there? Channel the energy. Use your frustration to fix the problem, not to punish the person. Revisit later. If something needs to be addressed, do it when you're calm, not when you're inflamed. And sometimes, things don't need to be addressed at all. Sometimes, the best answer to a careless comment or a moment of rudeness is none. Because silence isn't just the absence of words, it's the presence of understanding. When you're angry, you're standing at a crossroads. React and escalate, or pause and rise above. The Stoics would say, choose the pause, choose the silence. Let others be ruled by their passions. You remain ruled by reason. There will be moments when your silence feels like the hardest thing to hold on to, but it is in those very moments, when every nerve is calling you to lash out, that your silence is most powerful. So the next time anger rises like a storm inside you, don't reach for words, reach inward. Find the stillness behind the storm. Let that silence be your compass. And in that silence, you'll find what the Stoics found, not just control over your anger, but control over your life. 4. When facing rumors or gossip, few things test our composure like being the subject of gossip. Whether it's a whisper in the workplace, a misinterpreted action, or a flat-out lie about your character, rumors feel personal, invasive, unjust, and painful. The urge to confront them is strong. We want to explain ourselves, correct the story, set the record straight. But the Stoics offer a radically different response. Silence. Not silence born of fear or helplessness, but of strength, clarity, and confidence. Imagine this. You find out that someone has been spreading falsehoods about you. Maybe they said you took credit for something you didn't, or suggested you were dishonest, or questioned your motives behind a decision. Your name is on their tongue, but not your truth. You could rush to everyone who heard the lie, defend yourself, clear the air, plead your case. Or you could pause and say nothing. To the Stoics, your reputation isn't built in conversations behind your back. It's built in how you live. Your actions, not your rebuttals, define your character. Marcus Aurelius put it simply, if anyone can refute me, show me I'm making a mistake or looking at things from the wrong perspective, I'll gladly change. It's the truth I'm after, and the truth never harmed anyone. What harms us is to persist in self-deceit and ignorance. In other words, you don't need to protect your ego. You need to stay rooted in truth. And here's the truth. When someone spreads a rumor about you, it reveals more about them than it does about you. Rumors often originate from envy, misunderstanding, or insecurity. When you engage with them, you validate them. When you stay silent, you strip them of power. This doesn't mean you never defend yourself. If something endangers your well-being, your job, or your safety, of course you take appropriate action. But even then, you act with calm, with reason, with poise, never with panic. Let's look at a more subtle situation. The daily, low-level gossip that circulates through communities and workplaces. The temptation is to join in, to explain, to justify, or worse, to fight fire with fire by gossiping back. But the Stoic chooses a higher ground, a quieter one. Epictetus advised, if someone speaks ill of you, rather than defend yourself, respond clearly. He was not aware of all my other faults, else he would not have mentioned only these. It's a response that disarms not with argument, but with humor and self-awareness. Better yet, sometimes the best response is no response at all. Consider a teacher falsely accused by a few parents of favoritism. Instead of launching a defense or writing angry emails, she continues to do her job with diligence and integrity. Over time, her behavior reveals the truth. The rumor dies. Her silence wasn't submission, it was strategy. Because here's the thing about gossip, it needs fuel. Every reaction, every defensive comment, every counter-rumor keeps it alive. But silence starves it. Let's also remember how fragile gossip is under the weight of time. What feels urgent and outrageous today is forgotten tomorrow. The Stoics saw the grand scale of life. They didn't react to every petty offense because they had their eyes on something bigger. Inner peace, personal virtue, long-term truth. When someone lies about you, your first thought might be, I can't let people believe this. But the deeper question is, do I trust that my actions will speak for themselves? If the answer is yes, then speak through them. The Stoic path invites you to focus not on controlling other people's narratives, but on living yours fully and with integrity. Your reputation will be shaped not by rumors, but by your consistent, repeated behavior over time. Here are a few practical ways to apply Stoic silence when facing gossip. Redirect your energy. Don't waste time on what's said in shadows. Use that energy to keep doing your work well. Stay consistent. The best proof of your character is the stability of your actions. Let others defend you, or let the truth speak later. Often, silence earns allies without a word. Don't feed the fire. Avoid counter-gossip. It only entangles you in the same game. Detach emotionally. You are not defined by what others say. You are defined by how you live. Seneca wrote, "Time discovers truth." And it's true. Gossip doesn't last. What endures is virtue. So the next time you hear your name in someone else's story, pause. Don't run after every whisper. Don't correct every lie. Let your silence be your filter. Let your life be your statement. And trust that in time, the truth will echo louder than the rumor ever did. 5. When dealing with grief and loss. There are moments in life when words fail us. Not because we don't have something to say, but because nothing we say would be enough. One of those moments is grief. Whether it's the loss of a loved one, the end of a relationship, or the collapse of something you once believed in, grief creates a silence of its own, a silence that feels heavy, unfamiliar, and hard to carry. But for the Stoics, this silence isn't just a result of loss. It's a tool for healing. We live in a world that rushes us through grief. People say things like stay strong, keep busy, or move on. But Stoicism offers something different. It doesn't ask us to ignore pain. It invites us to sit with it quietly and understand what it's teaching us. Seneca wrote, "What need is there to weep over parts of life? The whole of it calls for tears." It sounds grim at first, but it's a gentle reminder. Suffering is not a failure. It's a part of the human experience. And grief is not a sign of weakness. It's the cost of having loved deeply. Imagine you've just lost someone close to you. Everyone around you is offering advice, distraction, even forced optimism. But what if you chose silence instead? Not silence as avoidance, but as reflection, as space, as permission to feel. Silence in grief allows us to process what has happened, not just intellectually, but emotionally and spiritually. It gives us room to breathe, to remember, to honor. It also helps us avoid speaking out of pain. In the early stages of loss, emotions run wild. Anger, confusion, guilt, even resentment. Words spoken from those places can do damage, to others and to ourselves. Silence protects us from creating more hurt in the midst of what already hurts. C.S. Lewis, after the death of his wife, wrote, "The pain I feel now is the happiness I had before." That's the deal. That's a Stoic thought in disguise. Grief and joy are not opposites, but two sides of the same coin. We grieve because we once loved, and love, like all things, is temporary. That truth isn't meant to be cold. It's meant to awaken us. The Stoics constantly reflected on the impermanence of everything, not to be morbid, but to be grateful. Marcus Aurelius advised, "Do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. Death hangs over you. While you live, while it is in your power, be good." That awareness isn't meant to depress us, it's meant to focus us. Grief gives us that same clarity, if we let it. Here's how Stoic silence helps in times of loss. It allows space for emotion without explanation. You don't have to justify your pain or rush to appear okay. Silence gives you the right to simply feel. It prevents regretful speech. In grief, we can say things we don't mean. Silence gives us time to think before we speak from sorrow. It honors the moment. Some losses are too sacred for small talk. In silence, we remember more deeply, more honestly. It opens the door to wisdom. In stillness, we begin to see life differently. The small things fade. What truly matters comes into focus. And sometimes in that silence, we remember what we've gained, not just what we've lost. Loss teaches us about love, about impermanence, about what truly matters. It humbles us. It softens our ego. It connects us with every other human being who has suffered, which is in truth, all of us. The Stoics were not emotionless. They felt grief. Seneca mourned the loss of friends and family. Marcus Aurelius lost multiple children in his lifetime. Yet in their writings, they offer a profound balance. Feel the grief, but don't become consumed by it. Let it shape you, not shatter you. Silence in this context becomes sacred. It becomes the space in which healing begins. Not quickly, not easily, but honestly. There is no right way to grieve, but there is a wise way, and that wisdom often begins with quiet reflection. So if you're grieving or walking with someone who is, don't rush to fill the silence. Let it exist. Let it speak. Let it hold what words cannot. And when the time comes, let your actions, your compassion, your resilience, your presence speak of the love that was lost and the strength that remains. Because ultimately, grief is not about forgetting. It's about remembering with presence, with honesty, with silence. 6. When dealing with ignorance or provocation, there are few things more frustrating than engaging with someone who refuses to listen. Someone who speaks with confidence but without understanding. Someone who criticizes what they don't fully grasp and does so with arrogance. These moments can tempt even the calmest person to lash out, correct, or retaliate. But the Stoic answer is something different. Not argument, not sarcasm, not scorn. Silence. Why? Because not every battle is worth fighting, and not every voice deserves a response. The Stoics understood that ignorance is part of life. People will misunderstand you. They'll misrepresent facts. They'll speak with certainty about things they've never experienced. And if you try to correct every falsehood, every insult, every shallow opinion, you'll exhaust yourself. That's why silence is not surrender. It's strategy. Imagine you're in a meeting and a colleague openly dismisses your idea, not with reason, but with mockery. Or you post something thoughtful online and someone responds with ignorance dressed as wit. Your blood rises. Your mind begins crafting the perfect comeback. But then you stop, you breathe, and you say nothing. That pause, that's Stoic wisdom in motion. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You always own the option of having no opinion." There is never a need to get worked up or to trouble your soul. In other words, you don't have to respond just because someone provokes you. You don't have to defend yourself every time someone misunderstands you. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let foolishness echo into silence. Think of Galileo, accused of heresy for supporting the idea that the Earth revolves around the sun. Though he faced fierce opposition, he stayed composed. He didn't scream or rage. His silence wasn't weakness. It was confidence in truth. A truth that didn't need to shout to be real. That's what Stoicism reminds us. Truth stands on its own. It doesn't need volume. It doesn't need applause. It only needs time. When someone tries to provoke you, to bait you into reaction, responding with silence shifts the power dynamic. Suddenly, you're not on their level. You're above the noise. You're choosing your peace over their validation. Here's something else. Many people argue not to learn, but to win. They're not seeking understanding. They're seeking dominance. And you don't owe them your energy. Stoic silence says, "You may speak, but I don't need to answer. I know who I am." That quiet confidence is magnetic. It draws people in. It sets boundaries without confrontation. It tells the world, "I don't argue for my worth. I live it." Of course, there are moments when misinformation needs correcting, especially when others could be harmed. But even then, the Stoic asks, what's the wisest way to respond? Do I educate with kindness? Do I ignore and move on? Or do I simply model truth through my actions? Silence is not always inaction. It's often preparation. It gives you time to assess whether something deserves your energy or just your patience. Here are some practical ways Stoic silence helps in the face of ignorance. Avoid pointless debates. Ask yourself, will this conversation improve anything or just drain both of us? Stay composed under provocation. The more someone tries to rile you up, the more powerful your calm becomes. Choose your audience. Some people seek understanding. Others seek conflict. Know the difference. Model wisdom. Don't force it. People learn more from your example than your explanations. Protect your peace. Not everything needs your input. Sometimes, silence is your best boundary. Epictetus said, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." So when you encounter ignorance, remember, shouting facts at closed minds rarely works. But silence protects your focus and sharpens your presence. You are not here to convince everyone. You are here to live with integrity. And that often means walking away from arguments that lead nowhere. So the next time someone provokes you with ignorance, pause. Don't respond from ego. Don't fall into the trap. Choose silence. Let your restraint speak. Let your presence do the talking. Because ultimately, silence isn't just a way to avoid conflict. It's a way to rise above it. 7. When faced with injustice. Injustice strikes a deep chord in us. It stirs anger, heartbreak, and an almost unbearable urge to act, to protest, to confront, to demand that wrongs be made right. And in many cases, that urge is noble. Justice matters. But the Stoics teach us something that at first seems counterintuitive. Even in the face of injustice, our first response should be silence. Not because we don't care, not because we accept wrongs, but because silence allows us to act from reason, not rage. Imagine you've just been overlooked for something you clearly earned. A promotion, a recognition, a voice in a decision. You feel wronged. Everyone around you knows it. The moment is raw. You could lash out, call it unfair, protest loudly, but you don't. You pause. You wait. You choose your moment. And in that silence, something powerful happens. You begin to think clearly. Stoicism is not about tolerating injustice passively. It's about responding to it strategically. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." In other words, don't mirror injustice with resentment or retaliation. Rise above it. That's what Nelson Mandela did. Wrongfully imprisoned for nearly 3 decades, he emerged not bitter, but composed, focused on healing a nation rather than taking revenge on those who had wronged him. That choice, grounded in calm and dignity, transformed South Africa and inspired the world. Mandela's silence was not apathy, it was clarity. He understood that yelling into chaos doesn't create peace. Only disciplined, thoughtful action does. And silence was his preparation for that action. You might think, but if I stay silent, nothing will change. But silence doesn't mean doing nothing. It means not reacting blindly. It means observing, understanding, and then choosing your response with precision. Stoic silence in the face of injustice works like this. It preserves your energy. Anger exhausts you. Silence stores your strength for what actually matters. It sharpens your awareness. When you're not consumed by fury, you see things more clearly. You find opportunities others miss. It gives you time to gather support, to plan a better response, to decide what action is worth taking. It avoids escalation. Reacting emotionally often leads to more injustice. Acting deliberately gives you a chance to create change. This doesn't mean you always stay silent forever. Injustice sometimes demands a voice, but not a reckless one. The Stoic speaks only when words serve truth, not ego. There's another important layer to this. Injustice often challenges our identity. It feels personal. But Stoicism teaches us to separate our inner self from the chaos around us. You can be insulted, Seneca wrote, He who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary. Anticipating injustice, rehearsing outrage in our minds, these things add suffering where there doesn't need to be any. Silence cuts through that. It reminds us, I am not what they say. I am not what they take. I am not how they treat me. I am only how I choose to respond. And when you respond to injustice with calm resolve, when you speak only after listening, when you act only after reflecting, your actions carry more weight. Your presence commands more respect. Let's be clear, Stoic silence does not condone injustice. It prepares you to confront it with strength instead of spite. Here's how you apply it. Feel the injustice, but don't become it. Allow yourself to acknowledge the wrong, but not be poisoned by it. Pause. Before speaking, before acting, before reacting, pause. Remember your values. Ask, what response aligns with my principles? Act when the time is right. When you do speak or act, let it come from wisdom, not wounded pride. Lead by example. Show others what strength under pressure looks like. The world is full of noise. People shouting at systems, at each other, at shadows. But the Stoic cuts through that with silence, and then with substance. So when you face injustice, and you will, don't give your power to the first emotion that rises. Let your silence remind you of what you control, your thoughts, your voice, your choices. And remember, justice is not always won by those who speak first, but often by those who speak last and speak wisely. Closing reflection. Let your silence speak. In a world that encourages us to speak constantly, to react immediately, to have opinions on everything and share them everywhere, silence can feel like rebellion. But as we've seen, silence isn't about withholding. It's about refining. It's not muting your voice, it's elevating your judgment. And in Stoicism, silence isn't retreat. It's power, focused, controlled, intentional. Throughout the 7 situations we've explored, being unfairly criticized, facing boastfulness, confronting anger, navigating gossip, enduring loss, responding to ignorance, and meeting injustice, one truth stands out. Silence is a form of leadership. It's the leadership of the self. To choose silence when your ego screams for vindication. To choose stillness when your emotions beg for release. To choose presence when your world is pushing you to react. That is the mark of inner mastery. Stoicism doesn't demand that you never speak. It asks you to speak less and mean more. To pause, to reflect, to ask, does this serve my values? Does this serve truth or just my pride? There is incredible strength in restraint. The strength to not be dragged into pettiness. The strength to not retaliate out of weakness. The strength to let go of the need to be understood by everyone. 'Cause you won't be. And that's okay. The Stoic walks through life with calm steps, not because they are unaffected by the world, but because they are deeply rooted in something steadier than approval or noise. They are anchored in reason, in virtue, and in peace. You may not be able to control how others speak to you, how they judge you, how they treat you, but you can control the space between their words and your response. And in that space, in that silence, is your freedom. There will be times when silence feels lonely, when others misread it, when you're tempted to explain yourself, to prove your point, to reclaim your place in the conversation. Let them wonder. Let your life, your behavior, your decisions, your character be the clearest thing about you. Let your results speak louder than your defenses. Let your silence remind people that you are rooted in something deeper than noise. The Stoics would say, if you must speak, let it be from wisdom. If you must act, let it be from clarity. And if you must be silent, let it be from strength. So the next time the world rushes you to react, do the opposite. Pause, breathe, and remember that your silence isn't emptiness, it's presence, it's awareness. It's the mark of someone who is not ruled by chaos, but guided by character. Let your silence be the space where your power grows. Let it be your shield. Let it be your signal. Let it be your practice. And most importantly, let it be your peace.